Hi, and welcome to a video on how to insert a slider on the Ti-nspire. Sliders are really great for manipulating functions, examining how a certain value in the function can change what the function looks like, whether it gets translated or transformed in some way. And to insert a slider, there's actually several ways to do it. I'm going to start by showing you how steps that will work for whatever version of software that you have in your calculator. And then we'll show you how the 4.2 version can really make it a lot easier, a nice shortcut in there. To check what version of the software that you have, you go to your calculator screen and go to Settings. Under Settings, you're going to look at Status. Under Status, there's Version. It's going to show you which version you have. You can see on my calculator here I have version 4.2. But you can check that. If you don't have 4.2, I do encourage you to upgrade that, and I do have a video about how to upgrade your software on your computer if that's something that you want to do. Upgrading it on your calculator should be pretty simple. Go ahead and Google that to check that out. So getting 4.2, I highly recommend it. So let's get started with inserting a slider. We're going to go ahead and create a graphing document, and from your graphing screen we're going to go to Menu and Actions. Under Actions, if you scroll all the way down, you'll see Insert Slider is an option. All these boxes are really key ways to set them, but it's going to depend on what you want your slider to do. Now, for this purpose, for this video, I'm going to decide to graph ax squared, with a being the value that I change. So I'm going to put an a in for my variable. Value is its initial value. So do I want to start it at 1? That's perfectly fine. So it's going to start it at 1, but I'll be able to change that. Minimum and maximum, that's how much it changes in between. -5, I think I'm going to make it a -8 and a +8. So what is the largest value my a could be and the smallest value my a could be? I decided to go from -8 to +8. Step size, I can leave it as automatic, or I can change it to 1. Maybe it goes from -8, -7, -6. But automatic is fine there. And style, that's just personal preference. Do you want your slider to be horizontal or vertical? But that's whatever you prefer. So I'm going to go ahead and hit OK with these settings that I've chosen. But again, remember, those settings are ones that you can adjust for whatever you're graphing. When the slider pops up on the screen, you're going to see that there's a box around it. If you've hit Enter already, the box disappears. But until the box disappears, you can move the slider around the screen so it's out of the way of your function. You can go ahead and use your touchpad here to slide it, and you can slide it down, somewhere you want it on the screen so it is out of the way. That's, again, personal preference. Where do you want it to be? But I usually do the bottom left or bottom right. I find that that's usually more out of the way for me. Once I'm happy with its location, I can hit Enter. Now I've got my slider, and it's time to graph my function. So I'm going to hit Tab, and I type in my ax squared. Now, critical thing here, you need to make sure that the value you want the slider to apply to is separated from anything that's next to by a multiplication sign. Alright, notice when I do that, the A switched from being just an A to having the same font and being bolded as my slider here. That tells me that my calculator recognized that this A applies to this A. Without that multiplication sign, if I hit Enter, it's not going to work. Notice this is what happens with the 4.2 software. If you don't have the 4.2 software, it's just not going to graph anything. But that's not what I want to graph. I want to graph the where's my graphing? There it is. I want to graph it where A is my slider. So I'm going to put a multiplication sign in there. It's bold. Now when I hit Enter, it knows that this A applies to this A on my slider. And I can use my left and right arrows to change the A. Notice it's telling you right here what A is. A is 5, 6, 7, 8. I say, oh, well, look at that. When I change my A, this is how my graph changes. This is A is 0, so it's nothing. Negatives, and so on and so forth. And so my graph will adjust depending on the value of the slider. And so that is how you can insert a slider. Now, a couple helpful tips. If you want to edit the settings on your slider, what you can do is you're going to click, basically do a right-click function. So if you happen to be on a computer software, all you have to do is right-click on it and you can see settings. But we don't have a right-click on our calculator. We sort of do. It's the Control, then Menu. See, behind it has this little box behind the menu button. So if you hit Control and then click Menu, you have this alternative menu come, and you could, again, move the slider if you want to. You could, that was what I went, there we go. We could go do Control Menu and change the settings if I need to. If I need to change the letter or the value of it. I can also, if I need to, go ahead and delete it, right? Animate, however, is my favorite feature. If you hit animate, what's going to happen is it's going to scroll you through the values, and you can just watch the function. So let it move the slider for you and think to yourself, okay, what is happening when I change the A? And that's a really great way and fun thing to watch your calculator do. So again, that is how you enter a slider if you're using any version of the software. Let's look at what the 4.2 software does next. I'm going to start by going ahead and deleting this. I'm going to hit escape to stop the animation. And do control menu and stop animate. Then I'm going to go ahead and delete my slider and delete my function. So next thing, let's say I have the 4.2 software. This is really cool. Without entering a slider, let's say I want to graph mx plus b with the m and the b changing, so that's two sliders. I'm going to type in mx plus b, but remember, a critical thing here is I do need that multiplication sign between the m and the x. The b I also want a slider for, but because there's a plus sign that separates it from the variable of x. So again, really just need a separation between variables. I'm going to hit enter, and my calculator automatically recognizes that I want a slider. So pretty cool. Create a slider for m, and for b I hit OK. And I've got two sliders created, and I'll just put them up there. And I've got my sliders. Now they're automatically from -5 to 5. I can change those settings if I want to. But I can say, okay, let's see what happens when I change the m, and I play around with the values of m. Or I can click on the b and change them with the values of b. Right there. You can see the b moves it up or down, and the m is changing its slope. So that is how you can change or add a slider, add a slider when you have version 4.2. As I said before, however, if you do not have version 4.2, you can go ahead and add it the way I showed you initially, and it'll work to create a slider for you. And finally, just a reminder, if I want to get rid of the slider, control, then menu, delete, will remove a slider. So I encourage you to play around with sliders today, examine them, see what they do to your different functions. They're a really great tool.